This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the few that are here and to everybody online. The first thing I'd like to do is ask everybody to stand with us to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I sure hope everybody online was doing that with us, standing up and looking at the flag. Shame on you if you're not. All right, item number 2, public comment. Is there anybody in the room that would like public comment? Is there anybody online with public comment? Anybody raising their hand? All right, I'm going to move on to item number 3 and 4. We have consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. The first one is the minutes, and the next one is the 2024 quarter 4 unaudited financials.
Move to accept the consent agenda as written. Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor with, any discussion? All right. All in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, moving on. Item number 5. Air Pollution Control Division. Jessica online.
Yeah. Hi, Al. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry, I tried starting my camera and it's telling me that the app can't access it, so I apologize. You'll just have to listen to me today. So a few updates from the Air Pollution Control Division. Upcoming in the next month or so, we do have one public outreach meeting regarding the Guzman Energy Clean Energy Plan. This will provide an overview of the materials developed by Guzman Energy regarding their compliance with their obligations under the Clean Energy Plan. That will be on June 11th at 11 a.m. Next, I just have a few updates regarding the Air Quality Control Commission and activities happening there. In May, the commission met for one day and had a very packed schedule. They received a briefing from the regarding activities at the Energy and Carbon Management Commission, formerly known as the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. There was a briefing regarding what is regulation number 27, which governs greenhouse gas related requirements for maintenance and manufacturing sector. This briefing in particular was with regard to what is known as the Industrial Decarbonization Fund that was directed by the Commission to be stood up. This offers an alternative compliance pathways for different manufacturing operations that are subject to regulation number 27. The Commission also had a final discussion regarding their updated procedural rules, and in particular, the development of the procedural rules guidebook. This guidebook accompanies new rules adopted by the Commission for how they undertake business. And the guidebook provides more details for individuals or entities that are wishing to participate in various Commission activities, in particular rulemakings. There is also 2 different requests for hearing. The first is a modification to the Building Benchmarking and Performance Standards Regulations, or Regulation number 28, to incorporate different statutory changes that were adopted in this legislative session, in particular, identifying exemptions for different agricultural buildings and clarifications and technical corrections regarding the use of utility subscription services, and clarifications around the annual deadline for any fees. The other hearing that was established is regarding regulation number 30, or air toxics, priority toxic air contaminant regulations. The division will be proposing the establishment of what are known as health-based standards for the 5 priority air toxics that were established. Their 5 priority air toxics are benzene, ethylbenzene, formaldehyde, hexavalent chromium, and hydrogen sulfide. These health-based standards won't have any real actionable play right now. They will just be established, and any particular future use cases would be contemplated in different rulemaking actions. Next month, the Commission will be having their annual retreat. This will be in Salida. They'll be kind of discussing the business of the Commission, including election of officers, a discussion of action items that'll be on their calendar in the next year, and receiving an update on the legislative session. One item I do want to note that is not specifically called out in the handout that was provided to you all is that we are also continuing the work of ozone planning work. We held 2 public meetings to discuss the upcoming rulemaking that will be requested in July for the contemplation of the serious state implementation plan under the 2015 standard. Also being proposed with this rulemaking are amendments to various regulations focused on the reduction of ozone-forming pollution and other administrative updates as well. And we can provide more information on that in our upcoming materials. But I did want to note that as well as we work closely with the NPO staff on the development of certain elements of the modeling, emissions inventories, and motor vehicle emissions budgets included in that state implementation plan. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone that has questions? Jessica. Okay, Jessica, thank you very much for
Absolutely.
your presentation. Next is item 6, NFRMPO Ranger Quality Program Updates. Dina, but Dina is not here today, so Becky's going to make a short tweet.
Yeah, so the handout, the report is in the packet. Just some really high-level highlights. There are 2 key transportation and air quality bills that is in this report. Additionally, the RAC's control strategies, setting targets for on-road vehicles and off-road equipment, that is something that will be discussed at the RAC meeting tomorrow. It is a concept paper that they have. It is something that they are wanting to bring forward, but it has not been really vetted through the NPOs or the state, the division. Congress has withdrawn the California authority to regulate on-road vehicles and on-road engines, so that is something that we need to watch and pay attention to. And there has been EPA action on past Colorado SIP elements and moving those along with the reclassification that has been done, the voluntary reclassification. And that is, those are the highlights.
Anybody have any questions for Becky? I'm sure she can't answer. You tell Dina, because I don't think you study this, I think you just leave it at home, dude. As a kid, this is not something you study.
Nope.
I would worry about you if you did.
Nope.
All right, moving on to item 7, Regional Air Quality Council. Kristen, are you online, Commissioner?
I am. Sorry I can't be there. I'm very sick and I don't want to make you all sick, and I probably made the upper Front Range people sick this afternoon. So I'll talk briefly. As Becky was saying, we're going to discuss the on-road and off-road emissions tomorrow. I want people to know that this is just a very preliminary discussion about those topics. So and there's some suggestions on how to get to those right budgets, but nothing is set in stone yet. So I'll be asking some questions about that tomorrow. You heard a little bit from Jessica, so that, and I think I talked about this last time, but the Air Pollution Control Division asked for the voluntary reclassification to severe non-attainment for the 2015 70 parts per billion measure, and the RAC is developing a blueprint for control strategies, and so we are continuing to work on that. Like I said, nothing is set or has been adopted yet in that space, but we will continue those talks, and happy to forward anything. I think that Becky may be talking to some of the RAC folks maybe in August a little bit about the on-road emissions. Is that right, Becky?
So I met with the RAC staff last week. They will be coming to the North Front Range region in August. I think it's the 18th is the date that was set on to do an all-day forum. They asked that I present about air quality in the North Front Range, so I'm happy to do that. I don't know exactly how detailed they'll get about this blueprints in that, but yes, that is one thing they're going to talk about.
Great, thank you. So they're again happy to pass on any ideas. I'm assuming that, you know, a lot of, as we've had these discussions over the past several months, that a lot of NPO members are more interested in incentives rather than things that penalize either individuals or government entities. I think one of the ideas that's being considered for the on-road emissions is, you know, having people make changes to their fleet, and that would probably affect local government. So there'll be more at the next meeting, and of course, Becky may get more information in the meeting in August. So, but there again, that's kind of what we're working on at this point. Um, you know, this blueprint of ideas that can lower our ground level ozone.
Is that it? I think so. Okay. Any questions, Commissioner? All right, item 8, not me. Same person.
Okay. Well, congratulations to the North Front Range. We had way more applications than the Dr. Cog area is for the NAPME dollars. So people in our group were definitely paying attention. So we went over some of the applications in our last meeting, which was just about a week ago, and we will be meeting again in July to make those final, or I guess in June. That meeting was May, so we'll be meeting again in June to make the final recommendations of who would get funded. We had more requests than we had requests for dollars than we have dollars. But like I said, the North Front Range was very well represented in those applications. And you know, if you want to tune into that June meeting, you can see those deliberations over those applications. And that's about all we discussed at that meeting.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I think that's because we're well informed on the grant opportunities, so thank you, Commissioner. Is that Chairman Youth here, board member? Thank you.
Yeah. It's hard to remember, like, oh, council member, mayor.
But thank you, Kristen. How's that?
No, thanks. I appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, 70% of them came from north of Denver area. So I thought it would be flipped and we'd be fighting Denver communities for some of these dollars. But North Front Range came out strong. So good job.
All right, anything else on that? All right, we're going to move on to the NPO agenda. Number 9 is chair report. The only thing I will say is I won't take Heather's thunder because they're online, or she's coming. All right, here she comes.
Oh, like on cue.
I won't take Heather's agenda item, but we did attend the board chair TPR meeting with them and going over their projects, and she will give you the presentation we got, and then I'll do my computation at that time. So that's all I have. Go to number 10, executive director report. Becky.
All right, so I have a few things to go through. So the first thing is in your packet on page 31 is a letter from the EPA in response to Andrew Gruber, who's executive director of the Wasatch Front Regional Council, which is the Salt Lake City NPO. So he sent a letter on behalf of the Intermountain West group that you heard Paul talk about. He signed some letters to go to the EPA. This is in response to the letter to the new administration saying that they are interested in partnering with the Intermountain West NPOs and looking forward to, sort of coming together and learning more about this background ozone issue. So this is a good response. It's, acknowledging that this is an issue, but without committing too terribly much, but it's not a complete no, so that's a good sign. Then you all have probably heard about the MMOF reconciliation. We had a presentation from Michael Snow at the May TAC meeting about this. The June TAC meeting, there will be a 1-hour work session at the beginning of the meeting where we're going to go through with all of the TAC members and the project sponsors who want to be there, sort of come up with an idea of what we can do. Some additional guidance was sent out after the staff meeting today, so provide that to TAC members to look at. So we'll be working through that, hopefully bring something to council in July for discussion of that meeting. The safety dashboard that council had requested that the NPO work on, there was a crash data workshop on May 23rd to talk through the safety data. Michaela is working with our communities to get more recent crash data, and some of the communities have agreed to do that. She's still working to contact others, so we can look to see if regional safety targets are being met or not. There's also a draft crash data dashboard tool. It's still in the draft stage. We still need to get additional data into that. We took it to the TAC, and then we'll bring it to council for you to look at once it's in a more robust and sort of QC way. Legislative session outcomes. I know there's a further in the packet, there is a written report, but I did want to highlight a couple of bills, specifically SB 2530, which is the Increased Transportation Mode Choice Reduced Emissions Bill. There is a lot that's going on with this one, which will require CDOT and NPOs to create transit and active transportation inventory that identifies gaps in transit, bicycle, and pedestrian infrastructure and access within network provision of significant roadways and right-of-ways. So that is good news. That means we already have those identified in our RTP. So we already know what roadways and corridors we need to look at. It's due by July 1st of 26. We're also required along the CDOT to present a report to the TLRC on these inventories by October 31st, 26. Some of this we're still looking to get more information on and more guidance on, but as we learn more, we will continue to work with TAC to develop this inventory, but we're waiting to hear for additional clarification on that. Then there was House Bill 1007, which is the paratransit services. This applies to transport, both and get, and requires political subdivisions, states, or public entities, nonprofits that provide paratransit services to establish a plan to communicate information and provide paratransit services in emergencies, which I think our agencies already do, but now it's law. And then House Bill 251198, which is the Regional Planning Roundtable Commission. Not entirely sure what that means. We're waiting on more guidance, but there's not really a transportation element that we're aware of. Again, we're waiting on more guidance. And then there were 6 additional transportation-related bills that passed that are detailed in the legislative report. And the last thing I have is we have new NPO staff. We have an intern, John Meyer. He started on May 27th. He'll be with us through the summer, helping us with the accessibility of documents to make sure we're compliant with the state law, as well as doing JS work for our upcoming plans, so the active transportation plan and the freight plan. And then we have a modeler who will start mid-June, which is fantastic. Her name is Tajula. I'm going to butcher her last name, but it's Taranum, I believe. So she will be starting. She's coming to us from Oklahoma. So, and that is all that I have.
Questions for Becky? All right, going to move on to item number 11. Suzette, Executive Director Recruitment Process, are you online?
I am online. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
So the NPO has asked me to run the Executive Director recruitment process with Paul's departure last month. Our initial start was with the Human Resources Committee, and we talked about having this posted for 45 days, that was our original thought. We have really slowed down on applicants. And so in talking with the committee, we're shortening it to 30 days instead of 45. We do have 3 good candidates right now, and we're a little afraid we may lose them if we string this out a little too long. Another 2 weeks that they may be taking other positions. So the thought is to end it at 30 days, which would be the 16th of June of this month. That would be an opening for 30 days. After that, we do phone interviews. And the phone interviews we'll try to schedule them later. That 16th is a Monday. We would try to do maybe something scheduled later that week or first part of the next week. As we did last time, and I think this worked out pretty well, anybody that on the council that wants to participate, please participate. We'll probably be sending notices out to the whole council, and then for those that want to participate, can just join in. So from the phone interviews, which we'll probably script some questions for those, from that, then we would schedule the in-person interviews. Right now we have 1 in-state and 2 out-of-state candidates that have applied. So we would schedule that, and we'd probably run the process for all of you that were there on this last round. It's going to be very familiar. We would have them meet with staff and then have the managers from staff give their impressions to the council. The council would then hear a presentation from each candidate and then have some open discussion with each of the candidates. And then from there, we would do a social hour with the candidates and followed up by some deliberations and discussions. So that is the outline that we have right now, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So I was reading and I probably wasn't paying attention, sorry. Who's going through the applications to make sure they meet minimum quals? Is that just you?
No, that Mayor Pro Tem Mallow is also going through. He's the head of the HR committee. So the 2 of us are doing the review right now.
Do you remember how many we got on the last round when we hired Paul? I think you and I had about 10, but only like 3 or 4 made it to the next round, right?
Yeah, we interviewed. We interviewed 3, and I don't remember the exact number that we had that actually applied, but I think it was like 5. It wasn't a huge number that we were looking at. The other thing we're talking about doing is that these postings go mostly online, and so as you're looking at them and more people add online postings, they kind of drop down a little bit on some of the postings. We're talking about reboosting those postings up again, and obviously we're going to have to. We're going to change the closing date to the 16th from the 30th. So reboosting those and bringing it back to the top, and maybe we'll see a little more interest in the postings.
Did you post on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Because I didn't see it, but usually when I hit it, I have quite a few contacts, so I hit it.
I'd have to defer to Becky, as she and Barb were the 2 that did most of these postings.
No, we did post it on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if Jonathan had to verify if we posted it on our other social media, but I posted it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I saw Paul reference.
Yeah, Paul promoted it.
Yeah, I guess we wouldn't want to repost it. I gotta make sure I find it. I don't want to hit it.
Could you actually send us the posting, because then all of us could be sure to.
The posting on our website or on
the LinkedIn?
Yeah.
And then everyone should boost it. I'll figure out how to do it.
Any other questions for?
Very similar to last time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Suzette.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping us again. Item 12, Finance Committee is written. And you do know when I go through these, if there's something you want to pull and talk about, you can. Just because it's written. You'd be like, Johnny, I want to talk about that. You can. 13, legislative update. written, TAC, written, mobility, written. CDOT Region 4 10-year plan update. Director, Commissioner Stevens, go ahead.
Yeah, because I was a little late getting on, I think I missed the consent agenda, and I didn't know if we talked about with the financial update this month, but Tanya caught that we were paying too much money on when people were submitting payments by credit card through the Vango system. So there was 15% tacked on to our costs for those charges. And so she was looking into that, and then just wanted to know that, let folks know that we're looking at some new software as well. So I don't know if that had been mentioned, but I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
All right. Any other financial questions since we did go backwards, but that's okay. All right, item 16, CDOT Region 4 10-year plan list. Director Paddock.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me? Is this on?
I know it's
Okay. So Heather Paddock, Regional Transportation Director for CDOT. I presented last month a little bit more of a detailed slide as far as what we are doing, but we are basically in the process of updating our 10-year plan. We are looking to have a 10-year list of projects. So if you want to go to the next slide, some of our goals and basically our vision is to really make strategic investments that improve safety, fix our roads, and provide users mode choice. So we want to sustainably increase transportation choice. And obviously the desired outcome is continuing to have a good rideable surface, improve that safety, and provide that transportation choice. The other thing is we've had a couple new bills that have headed our way, and there is some accountability and transparency that we want to offer to the citizens. It's one of the requirements by law, but I think it's just good government to show where your dollars are going. So you're going to see in our, I don't think so much for the North Front Range, because the North Front Range has a pretty small list, but on some of our other projects, we are moving away from sort of, let's do 3 to 5 corridor and safety improvement projects with a sort of this amount of strategic dollars. We're actually trying to define the specifics. If you think of a GIS map, 385 is 300 miles long, and you're putting 20 million or 50 million of strategic funds, you're definitely not tackling 300 miles of that. So we're trying to be a little bit more specific in our scope so we can provide that transparency to the taxpayers. So we have 3 primary focus areas for the 10-year plan. This comes out of our Policy Directive 14. This is set by our Transportation Commission. Our 3 focus areas are advancing transportation safety, which we're really targeting those level of safety service, that's LOSS, 3 and 4, 4 being the worst as far as it relates to safety. The one thing about our LOSS ratings is it compares like corridors or like roadways across our whole state network. So when we're looking at what the level of safety service is, if it's rated a 4, for that type of facility, whether it's a 2-lane facility or it's an interstate, it's compared to other corridors just like it. Fix our roads is just exactly what it is. It's really just preserving the system that we currently have. And then sustainably increase transportation choice is really trying to move people out of their single occupancy vehicles, provide them that option either through transit or through another method, whether that's biking or walking. So one of the things I wanted to hit on here is that, and I think I shared this a month ago, but our strategic total when our plan was developed, we were using $500 million annually statewide. Our current fiscal constraint is now $225 million. So it has been cut more than half, a little bit more than 50%. But that is not the only color of money that we have inside of CDOT. And it is not, everyone was really leaning into the fact that if you're not on the 10-year plan, well, then your project doesn't get done. That is not necessarily true. We have certain colors of money. If you can go back to the last slide, just want to say that what's the strategic funds as part of what we were calling the 10-year plan, we have some general fund transfers, and the reason why that total went down is we have tough budget years, many of you heard. General fund transfers are going back to the general fund, so we don't have as big of a pot. We have some HUTF funding, we have some, IIJA funding in there, some bridge formula funding, some protect, and some freight program dollars in there. What's not included, I can go to the next slide, are all the other programs that we deliver. So our surface treatment, our other asset programs, our FASTER, HSIP, Hotspot, RPP, which we will have a discussion about RPP, but not today. Bridge and tunnel enterprise, a lot of our enterprise funding is not represented in our 10-year strategic list. I will say that CDOT is in the process of providing a more holistic, statewide vision for transportation that represents all the investments that we are making in transportation, not just the strategic funds, otherwise known as the 10-year plan, but also includes a lot of these enterprises, partly due because it's good government, also due because legislation wrote you need to be more transparent with where those dollars are going. So, next slide. So what does that mean for us? Region 4 gets about 24% of that $225 million. That is our fiscal constraint. So if you go to the next slide. So we are creating a new 10-year plan. We're looking more closely at the next 4 years, which is FY 27 through 30. But we are also identifying projects in the out years, which is 31 through 36. But we have a fiscal constraint in Region 4 of about $209 million. So for the North Front Range, you guys get about 23.5% of that dollar amount. We did have a 4-chair TPR meeting with all the chairs from each TPR. I'm fortunate to share that pot with 4 different TPRs. And we discussed how best should we split this money. Should we focus on interstate? Should we focus on US highways? The consensus was to come back, and I think everyone has their own needs. We have more needs than we have dollars available, so everyone felt putting a fiscal constraint per TPR or NPO was the best way to distribute those funds. So, so North Front Range, our fiscal constraint for the next 4 years is around $49 million, and in the out years around $74 million. So, couple things, if we added a new project, which in the North Front Range, it's good news, we are adding a number of projects because we got a lot done on I-25. And the first, 8 years of, when we developed the first 10-year plan, the lion's share of the money went to I-25. And I-25 is either complete or getting completed. And so we don't have a lot of out-year dollars to discuss. And we have some new out-year planning totals that we want to discuss today. So if we are adding a project, it definitely needs to hit some of these objectives. So either it needs to be a fix it first, a advancing transportation safety, or sustainably increased transportation choice. I think the other thing to note is that any project we put on this list should come into conformity with the greenhouse gas rule. So it ideally, which it is, would already be on a list of North Front Range projects because the NPO is responsible for doing the greenhouse gas compliance. So we don't want to add any projects that would bring the North Front Range out of conformity with the greenhouse gas rule. And where we are in the process, we are basically presenting to you today. We've had a lot of meetings leading up to this to kind of develop this list of projects. We are submitting a recommended list to headquarters on July 11th, so in about a month. It is a recommended list. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a final and adopted list. We have an executive oversight committee that is going to review the list, make sure it's meeting some of the PD14 goals. And then there will be a public process that'll happen this fall as far as we finalize the list, and then it will get adopted by the Transportation Commission in December. So here's our list. We'll just get straight to it. I think you've seen it in your packet. To speak about the color coding, if it's white, or gray, it was on the existing 10-year plan. If it's blue, it's a new recommended project. If it's gray, we are recommending not carrying it forward into the out years, and we have justification as to why. So I'm going to run through this list, and I will tell you that this is not something that council really takes a vote on, but this is CDOT's list. It's our dollars, but I believe it was built with collaboration and consensus from the North Front Range. So the first project on the list is the I-25 Mustang fleet expansion. Those dollars are actually going to move to a separate list in the 10-year plan that's Mustang specific. Segment 5, good news is we don't need to carry that 61 million into the out years because we were able to leverage the funding from CTIO, and so that project is considered complete, so we're going to remove it off the list. The next project on there is the I-25 and 14 interchange, or Mulberry interchange. 27 million was in the out years of the plan. We are recommending 11 million in the next 4 years and 20 million in the out years. After we've done some preliminary sort of analysis and design, we feel that the biggest need right now at the Mulberry interchange is that multimodal connectivity. We have no access to pedestrians, and so that 11 million is to advance design and implement some pedestrian safety across the interstate, as we have many people who think walking across the interstate is the safest route to get east-west. So we're looking at more than likely a grade-separated pedestrian overpass with those funds. Next one on the list is Spaghetti Junction, which is US 85 and 34. I will say that this is not a Tier 1 listed projects on the North Front Range, but from CDOT's perspective, we have failing infrastructure at that interchange. We've got bridges that my maintenance teams are out there on a weekly or every other week basis repairing, putting their lives at risk in the live traffic and impacting the traffic. So we're recommending $10 million in the next 4 years to, at a minimum, do some significant rehabs to those bridges, or leverage some BTE funds where we can do some actual bridge replacements. There is a broader vision for that Spaghetti Junction, but I will tell you 200 million is probably on the short side of what it would cost to replace that whole interchange complex. And I've got needs immediately that need to be addressed as it relates to the asset itself. Operationally, it functions. Safety-wise, it's still at a level service like 4 in certain segments, so we know it's confusing to the drivers. So we are looking to improve it from a safety perspective as well. So now we'll get into the new projects. First project on the list is the US 34 railroad elimination from Centerra to Larimer County Road 13. This project is represented on your North Front Range Tier 1 list, but not titled the same way. This is basically really kind of drills down specifically to that location on 34. We currently have a grant that's looking at that to eliminate those railroads. So we are looking at $12 million. If you can see the 2 columns, we started with a fiscal constraint that was actually larger than the dollars we had available. So with our TPR chairs, we were able to make, they're not fun cuts, but we have to make the cuts necessary to meet that fiscal constraint. The hope would be that we find dollars from other funding sources and or grants to shore up the gaps. So we know that 34 is our fastest growing corridor in the North Front Range, and we are feeling specifically from CDOT the pressure of development that's hitting. We have an access control plan, we have a PEL, but there needs to be design further advanced to really help these developers. Our intent is not to pay for all the infrastructure needed on 34, but to partner with development as they come through. But if we don't have a good plan for what 34 is going to look like, it's going to be really hard to implement something that's going to last 20, 30 years. So we're currently underway with a study through RPP. The intent of these funds would leverage some of the outcomes of that study. The next one on the list is the 34 transit signal priority and queue jumps. This was, and I probably should have colored this white, because this was an existing project in the 10-year plan. We had US 34, that is the #1 project in the North Front Range. This basically continues to advance that concept, looking at, I know we're in the process of designing what that transit looks like, that premium transit looks like from Greeley to Loveland. We know there's going to be needs for infrastructure and our queue jumps. That's what these funds are for. $3 billion in the next 4 years and $7 million in the out years. One of the things that rose to the top, and it's a priority for CDOT, is the US 34 Will County Road 17 intersection. That is LOSS 4, and it definitely is in desperate need of some improvements. We do know that right now, Greeley has a developer that is going to, they have plans to build an interchange at that location. If that is the case in the out years, we will not need that dedicated funding, which is, we're putting $9 million to it. If for some reason something were to fall through, we want the safety net to continue to say something needs to happen on 34 and 17.
Greeley is the developer.
Greeley is the developer. So Greeley is the developer, and they're solely paying for the intersection improvements that are going to address the safety and the capacity of that location. The next project on the list, also on North Front Range Tier 1 list, is US 34 and 287 intersection improvements. This project's been on the list for a really long time. It is got some LOSS 2 and 3 locations. It's in desperate need of some multimodal improvements. More than likely, we would pass those dollars through to the local agency through Loveland. We know Loveland has some dollars to bring to the table already, but we're trying to actually get that project to construction. So that was that recommendation. The next scroll down, just got a few more. CO257, this goes from basically 392 up to CO14. We have some really pavement out there. This also is not on your Tier 1 priority list, but it is on a priority list for CDOT. We don't have resurfacing funds identified, but we know that is low drivability and some really bad pavement. So we are recommending a overlay or a functional treatment to preserve the life of that corridor. It's getting a lot of traffic on it as of late. So about 7.6 million towards that. Next project is 392, resiliency and multimodal improvements between Highland Meadows and Colorado. This is that last 2-lane stretch headed into Windsor. We know this is a priority for the community of Windsor as well as Lemon County. We see it as a priority as well as CDOT, but we know there's more design and more clearances to get through, so we are recommending some funding in the out years at $20 million. I know we had 2 other projects that we were considering, but because of our fiscal constraint, we were not able to carry those forward. And that is the intersection of 392 and Timberline and the intersection of 287 and Larimer County Road 17. Both have needs, both are being advanced by the locals, but we are not able at this time to match it with strategic funds, but may be able to match it with other dollars. That is the list, so I'm gonna open any comments you guys have, but this is our recommendation.
So before we start, I'm going to make some statements. The thing that I appreciate Heather's honesty is this is strategic dollars. There's a lot of funding out there that's not being identified in this 10-year plan. So, I mean, it's important because that was one of the comments and questions I had during the board chair TPR is like, where's all the other money? So, we talked a little bit about how do we take these projects that aren't fully funding and other projects that are on the list, but getting the bridge enterprise list, getting the faster safety list, getting the resurfacing list, getting this list, getting RPP list, bringing it all together and trying to formulate strategic packages to get things done, right? We can spread the peanut butter and get nothing done, or we can combine the dollars to build a financial on street package that may be good for grants or other things. So one of those, just a couple statements that I wanted to bring out from the TPR4 chair and TPR meeting. So I appreciate your effort. And it's not easy, but it's one small part of $1.9 billion pie. Okay, questions? No way, you guys are gonna let it get off the hook that easy.
Did good outreach, right?
All right, does anybody online have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment. I appreciate your comments, Chair Olson and Heather and CDOT for all your work. I truly understand how hard this was to divvy all that out. So though 287 and 17, we in Bertha do see an issue there. I totally understand why it's not a priority under the fiscal constraints here. So I just want to thank you, and we'll keep pushing. Hopefully we'll find funds elsewhere.
Thank you, I appreciate that. You know, our original preliminary list did not encompass all the needs of the North Front Range. We did a lot of screening prior to even hitting that list, and then we had to cut again. So I know everybody probably leaves a little upset, but hopefully no one's leaving angry. These are tough projects. These are tough conversations. We have a lot of needs, and transportation, bottom line, needs more funding.
That was the most amazing part is she made us feel like we were having input to help her cut the money down to where she needed to be on the project she could. It was amazing. Strategic. In all sense, but if you guys are part of it, where do you want to move the money?
Learn from the best, Johnny.
Thousands. All right, thank you guys, great job.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to item 18, regional activity. I'm just joking, because I think this one's going to take, I'm not going to get out of here in time. Item 17, North Front Range NPO 10-year priority list of projects. Nicole and Evan, come on up.
Thank you so much. I'm Nicole Hahn, the city engineer for Loveland. We'll just keep the same energy of joy and acceptance going.
I don't think you're that lucky. We're not going to do that one.
So we appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about our the Technical Advisory Committee's recommendation. As we talked last time when we went way deep into the details around the scoring criteria and our strategy moving forward with this, we really wanted to take a data-driven approach to bring back to you sort of an overall cross-section of the region and what our problems are and where we need to invest our funding. A couple of things I'll point out, we heard over and over again in the TAC that the priorities of I-25 and 34 are absolutely priorities, and we do have a lot of other needs. And so you'll see on this list, there are projects that are not on I-25 and US 34, and some of them are fairly high ranking. So some of the needs on 392 as well as Harmony Road are scoring very high because that's where we have some problems. So we walked through the scoring criteria, again, safety, mobility, economic vitality, asset management, strategic importance, regional priority, and the regional priority came from the work session that we had, so some of the communities weren't able to attend that. Those scores were prioritized into this based on the number of votes that projects got in that scoring process that we went through as a region. Anything else you want to add?
No, I don't. I think we had some scoring criteria. We obviously went over this last time at Planning Council and kind of went deep into that large spreadsheet. Some of the things on the scoring criteria were difficult to quantify as we were going through these scores, I think, as a TAC, at least for myself. But really tried to just kind of cut through a lot of that and get some scores for the group here. So.
One other thing I'll mention, we did this process trying to coincide with CDOT's process. I'm really glad to see some of what we're seeing on this list is in the 10-year plan. So that worked out nicely. But we do, as a TAC, we want to come together and come up with a GIS tool or something that we can start to track this and have really good data. So when these opportunities come up, we've got a list ready and we sort of know what our needs are across the region. So that was sort of the so what of this process, was we need to go ahead and dig deeper. We tried to get this together ahead of this process to coincide with CDOT's process, but we know this is something we want to keep doing, keep working on. So with that, we can have some discussion about the projects and feedback.
All right, I'll open it up for questions, and Mr. James has had his hand up, I think, before you start.
I had my hand up when she walked up there, and so because I do have multiple questions. Let's talk a little bit about the data. Is it standardized? Is it where did it come from? I mean, CDOT has a data set. Were there data sets provided by individual communities that were used? And what was the reason used behind choosing the data? I'm a fan of having a standardized data set, i.e. CDOT's.
Absolutely, yeah, and the safety data was from CDOT Region 4, so we did use the LOSS data that Heather was talking about earlier, and so that was provided by CDOT and it was standardized across all of the scoring.
I'm curious as to whether, and thanks, Nicole, I'm curious as to whether the TAC feels that any of the data points that we use were subjective. Local funding readiness, how does one determine that? Project readiness, how does one determine that? I mean, was every data point plainly objective, or is that a box that can be checked by a submitter?
So this was a great point where we spent a lot of discussion time. We scored across the region, and what we discussed later on in that we did a work session with the entire TAC and walked through the data. As scoring communities, we don't know exactly what projects are ready, what steps lie ahead for some of the communities, and so we did need to dig deeper and kind of understand some of the project sponsors' take on that. If we had it to do over again, I think we would have done that process a little bit differently. But again, we were meeting this time constraint of trying to get it done now. So that's why we really want to take a deeper dive for the long term and do this in a GIS or have something that's a little bit more thought through in the way this works.
I appreciate that, and I am just not a fan of that which can be subjective. We're just awarding points. And geez, you asked me if my room is clean. I'm going to tell you, sure it is, and you're going to give me 5 points. You know, it needs to be objective and not subjective. I am curious about why we only brought forward 21 projects. For example, Dr. Cog has, say, their Metro Vision plan, which has multiple projects, many priorities. I believe that the Upper Front Range has up around 150 projects, and they prioritize 30 of those projects. Why just 21? Certainly, we have more to do, and I kind of want to play the game of the 10-year plan. I want to set us up for the next revision.
So this is Becky, I can answer that. This was just the tier 1 roadway list. We also have a tier 2 and a tier 3 with additional projects. We just prioritize the tier 1 list. So that's all these 21 projects are just that tier 1 list.
And the tier 1 were projects that got dots.
Yes.
So
yeah.
So the project that got dots, whether it got 17 or it got 1, made this list that from our little adventure down in Will County.
Back
Sure.
in January.
I'm curious, for example, Project 17, which is US 34 corridor within the NFRMPO boundary. How does that play to CDOT? Does CDOT look for more specificity on projects? I mean, we're talking about an entire corridor, which makes my little heart bleed because the entire corridor is a mess. But are we looking for more specificity when we have a lower number of dollars?
And I believe that project is the plan, the US 34, is that the
Yes,
plan?
that's the one that came from the US 34 TAC, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that one is just the corridor plan, which we are working with CDOT to, I think there's been some funding identified to start with a draft of that plan as well.
Okay. We have talked a lot in the past as we have put together these lists about having a corridor vision, so to speak. And of course, I-25 has dominated that conversation for years. While I'm not a fan of just submitting the whole corridor unless it's a plan. I think we still need to be corridor specific, at least in our thinking as we put projects forward. To me, there was a consensus among the planning council around I-25 and US 34. Where'd 392 come from?
And I think our take on this, what we did hear from some of the members on this commission, was that we wanted to look not just at the state highways, but at the overall system. We had the projects that were, Harmony was one that was added, right? It is not a state highway, but remains a priority for many of the communities in the planning region. 392 was a surprise for a lot of us, so I'm not surprised that you were surprised by that. What we can say,
I'm not surprised.
yeah, I'm not surprised. I drive it every day. I'm not surprised either, but it really showed up in the safety data, and a lot of that has to do, some of the projects that are listed in here are 4-lane cross sections, widenings. Really what that road needs is to have a center left turn lane, and I was chatting with Gina about this as well. It's one of her highways in her residency. But having a center left turn lane or some safety improvements could really be something that fixes some of the issues that we're seeing that is coming up in this scoring criteria. So it might not be the project that was scoped. What we're getting at here, I guess, the long and short of this is we as a TAC really would like to go back to the drawing board and take a deeper dive on this, so we're ready for the next time we do this. And we have some of these things worked out and have better answers for you next time.
My son added on that this weekend, so you'll have new information the next time you do it. On 392 and 19. Oh, and 19. It's fun.
I appreciate the work, Nicole and Tech. Thank you. Thank you for doing so. I feel strongly in that which we submit now, and especially in our outlier projects, needs to tee us up, but not necessarily for right now, but for 5 years down the road. I want us to have kind of a longer vision as we send our priorities off to CDOT. And Chair, I'll stop taking up all your time on your meeting, sir. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else have any questions?
I would like to make a comment. I guess that because of the State Highway 392 kind of popping up here and on CDOT, I don't believe it was listed as a priority for the North Front Range MPO. You know, it wasn't one of our priority corridor list. Would that be something that we could potentially look at?
392 is one of the 6 priority corridors.
Is one of the 6, okay. I wanted to make sure
it was very low.
It's because it only received 2 dots because there's only 2 towns that. At least Mayor Severance also put a dot on 392.
Yes, I put a dot on Island Meadows to Colorado Boulevard. I definitely did that.
Well,
And that really gets at I guess, as a technical advisory committee, our duty is to look at the overall system, look at the problems, look at the data, and really identify what the problems are. We do understand that there's a ton of growth on US 34, and that's, you know, how we rank those top priority corridors and why our focus is on those. But there are other problems that we need to be fixing throughout the region.
For teenage drivers.
Yeah. I have more coming up, so.
And Commissioner James had a comment.
Commissioner James? Oh, what did he say?
One more comment, Highway 34 and Highway 85 needs to be on this list. If CDOT has it and we don't, we're missing something. So this had been on the Upper Front Range list. This was an artifact of the 2020, the first version of the list, both from the North Front Range standpoint, Upper Front Range, and just the state as a whole. This was when Commissioner Kirkmeyer was on the Upper Front Range, and she had said putting some of the Upper Front Range money towards that, which is why it is not on the North Front Range list and was on the Upper Front Range, but we can always put it on our list if we would like to.
Well, I have a few comments. So I've been doing this for a long time, and regional connectivity and regional perspective is important to me. I was very shocked when I saw this list, and I'm sure Victoria's like frantic. I don't say anything stupid right now, but I was super shocked. I was shocked that 392 jumped up so high. But I can understand when I look at the scoring, and I look at how we scored things, and just so take it back in time. So get your time warp machine and go back. we used to score projects, and when we went to corridor projects, we quit scoring and we used the dots and we used what was regional versus what was needed for individual communities. I brought this up when we talked about this in January, that this is going to turn into a plan that's not so much regional as it's more programmatic for individual communities, right? Communities east of I-25 have taken a hit for the last, since 2013, and they've just taken a hit, right? Because we all focused in and we all came to the table, I think 13 communities around this group, the 14th will never show up. 15, a couple of them don't show up. So we made a statement, and the reason I-25 got done was because of that statement. So I fear that when we start going to a scoring criteria again, I'm not saying you guys you have too many criteria, I think. It needs to be narrowed down, right? It needs to be focused, and I think I like your plan of looking at it again. But I don't know if when we're setting up our 10-year plan, that we look at, I understand Heather's perspective, we can't just say US 34 corridor. We can't just say 392. We can't just say US 85 corridor. We gotta say what's important and where are we gonna spend that limited amount of funding with inside those priority corridors. And you can track whether it's 300 miles or 34 miles, you can track projects, segment 7, segment 8, segment 6, segment 5, segment 4, segment 3, segment 2. You can track projects with inside the corridor project. So this list scares me a little bit. It doesn't tie up to CDOT's list hardly at all. There's 3 or 4 to do. And that makes me nervous. What I want to say is 17, 35th, and 47th, those are going to be 98% funded by a local community. Those are not funded through this NPO. There's $8 million for transit. That $9 million you've seen on that list of others, that's for transit. That's not for the interchange. That's not for capacity. That's not for the improvement of mobility within our community. So I think when you're looking at 98% of the dollars, I don't know any community across the state that has brought 98% of the dollars for $220 million worth of work. So that scares me that there's not enough going into the people that are actually bringing money. You can't give all the money because if we have the money, why give them, right? But I think there has to be some thought more into percentage of people bringing money to the table, because we're not going to be able to rely on the state. And as I said earlier, this list doesn't coincide, because some of these might fall in a faster safety project. Some of this might fall with the bridge enterprise project. Some of them might fall outside of what we're looking at a strategic 10-year plan. Some of these projects might not need to be on the list, right? And we did not take. I didn't even know it was only strategic money. I thought I was doing it for the whole $1.2 billion. But I think those are some of the concerns I have with this list. And you guys did an amazing job with which you led down the path. And I think I brought this up a year ago that this was going to be ugly. But I can't.
And
Good job.
I think you're spot on, and everything that we've heard tonight, all of the comments we've heard tonight are almost an exact carbon copy of the conversation that we had at TAC. So all of your representatives, Victoria said many smart things and shared very similar sentiments about what we're seeing come out of this. I think as transportation professionals, we know that there are sometimes intersection improvements that, you can spend a little bit of money at the intersection. That's where you're gonna have 80% of your crashes. That's where you can make the biggest difference. And so I think the short list here is one of the things that we really want to go back and look at, the overall region. And then we know we have some corridors that need a focus, and we need to do this together, leverage money. And our hope is that all of these get funded, right? We want these to get funded quickly so we can move on to the next ones. But I do think where we started with, the list we started with, doesn't necessarily represent all of the projects that are out there. Some of the criteria we did have for project readiness and leveraging funding, we could have scored higher, to account for some of what you're talking about. Because I think when you can bring in federal money, bring in money from developers, and you can leverage and get a huge improvement for the region to fix a huge regional problem, that's a project that should shoot right to the top. And as we do grant processes going forward, I think those are things that we need as a region to say, if someone's bringing in a lot of the money, how can we get those projects funded so they're off the list and they're not competing for the rest of the money? So
And to tie into, I think this board still needs to prioritize scores. I think we have to say, these are our prioritization, and this is board, it's not a scoring criteria, it's a regional perspective criteria. It's what we think is the most important to move people, good service safely. I think ain't that the vision for CDOT? Move people, goods, and services safely, move people, goods, and services. Did that sort of stay somewhere in the mission or vision?
Sustainably.
Huh?
Sustainably.
Well, you guys added that after I left. So I think we still need to look at this, and I think we got some work to do. I mean, I-25 is done.
We agree. I think that was where the TAC really landed, is we need to take a deep dive and spend a little bit more time and get a better set of data going across.
Thank you. Any other questions for Nicole? Is there a hand up? I can't see this.
Yes.
It's behind you. Commissioner Stevens, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. It looked like Scott had his hand up too, so I don't know if that was up from before. But so I'm fine with, massaging this list and really kind of doing that. Is that something we want to take and do at a separate meeting, or is that something we want to, I mean, how do we want to approach that? Because it's hard to do it at a meeting like this to really have those kind of in-depth conversations about creating this list.
Yeah, I wouldn't let you guys do it tonight. I gotta leave. But yeah, no, Commissioner, I agree with you. I think maybe we need to have TAC and Becky work together to maybe set up a separate meeting, and then maybe we have a separate conversation. We can Zoom, we can be in person, but I think we need to have some more discussion, go over the scoring criteria, go over how we got here, make sure we're thinking regional, not individually. That's my perspective, but I'm sure everybody else has other perspectives. But I think it's something that we are a regional organization, and we've been really good at that since about 2013, 2012.
Right. No, yeah, I would be very open to a separate meeting where we sort of dig down and really have the discussions. I mean, I think that the putting the dots on things was effective in sort of getting, an idea of where we're at, but I think having the conversations about what we want to prioritize regionally is really important. So I am up for that meeting.
Do I get a thumbs up for an extra meeting or no? I mean, you guys got to come to meetings, not. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I also agree with Commissioner James that our decision-making, and I agree with you and your, with the chair, in that we should be making decisions that are regionally relevant. But I also think it needs to be data-driven and again, not subjective or just opinions. And so when we have this meeting, I'd like to make sure that we have access to data to help guide us in our decision-making processes. And I'll just leave it at that.
Commissioner James?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We kind of put our TAC through a fire drill because CDOT had a rather truncated schedule on putting this together. And I'm not saying that it was a fire drill that wasn't worthwhile. It certainly brought forward some good work. But it seems to me, and am I wrong in assuming that that which CDOT is going to put forward in their update is pretty much baked? Heather presented that a little bit earlier this evening, and I am in agreement, in candor, with what she presented. So therefore, I still feel this needs to be a long-term vision. And if we're going to set ourselves up, let's take a month or two, because of there's the here and now, and I'm not opposed to what CDOT's going to present the here and now, but I think this needs to tee us up for the next incarnation of the 10-year plan. And we truly need to have that kind of more in-depth conversation about the regional vision of the NPO. It's just my thought, Johnny.
Yeah, and Commissioner, I agree with you. And that goes back to the color of money too, right? Like, what colors of money are we dealing with? Because we're really dealing with, if I look at this list, it's strategic to somebody. Is it strategic to the NPO? And when we're looking at the list that Heather's put together, it's a strategic project list that meets those 3 criteria that she laid out. Maintain, safety, and transit mobility, bike, ped, right? Those are, did I get that right?
Yes. We increase transportation choice, fix our roads.
Oh, I know what it says, I just paraphrase what I know it means. There's a difference of what it says and what it means. So I think it's important that we make sure that data is, like Commissioner James said, what is the volumes? What is the accident history, right? What is the importance? A US highway, any other state, and a US highway is different than a state highway or a Colorado highway. It's CO, Colorado State, I call it state highway still. I'm old school. But there's a reason there's a criteria that's set by the feds. There's a reason there's a criteria set by the state, right? There's a reason why things happen. There's operational needs. There's regional connectivity needs. All those different needs. And so when you start looking at that, I know you guys did this already once. You're going to educate us, non-transportation people, that do it every day, or engineers that do it every day. So I think that's where I think the data needs to be. So how do we get there?
Yeah, and there are data that really are best set by you all, right? The ability to leverage and the economic vitality, some of those pieces too that, we can certainly focus on some of the criteria and bringing data that we have for this list of projects. I guess one question I will ask, and this is a dangerous question, so you can kick me from over there if you want, but do we want to stick with this list? Or do we want to go back and I know we were trying to get this done, do we want to stick with this tier 1, or do we want to go deeper and look at some of the other projects, get a bigger list? I know I heard Commissioner James bring that up, that maybe this is too short of a list, and as we start to fund these and we have opportunities to fund some of these, do we want to look deeper than that? So as TAC goes back, we can keep working with this list, or we can look more comprehensively with a larger list of projects and do the prioritization across a larger list of projects. So I wanted to just get some feedback from you on that.
From me, or because I have?
Yeah, or the whole,
I'll give my opinion after everybody talks.
From what I'm hearing, it sounds like there needs to be some more coordination between CDOT projects and NFR projects, so that I think needs to happen during this next list revision.
So what I heard you say, just make sure I heard you clearly, that there needs to be a revision to get it to match up a little bit strategically.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's one answer.
I guess I'm kind of confused as to why we went through the entire exercise then and mapped out tier 1. So I'd be fine if we kept tier 1 and tier 2, but looked at prioritized tier 2. But I would still like to keep that distinction because there's so much work that we've got to this point that, I don't know, I know everybody's busy and I don't want to start all over and dedicate countless hours to completely revising it.
But I think it's a good idea to go deeper, but maybe prioritize tier 2 as well. So saying we already did the work to this, and but then the next level is in tier 2, what could easily jump to be the next thing. So it's not just, the tier 2 bucket of what's after that.
So that as we do fund projects that we have others ready to move in.
Tier 2 to tier 1 easily.
Mr. Chair, I guess I'm having a little bit of heartache because I think everybody, they're like, oh my gosh, we were so surprised that, State Highway 392 made it up on the list. And I'm getting the feeling that everybody's like, well, what can we do to take it off so it doesn't make it on this list? And so that's where I feel like this is going, hey, we need to take off some of the criteria that we've all agreed on because we feel our area deserves to be on the top of this list. So that's why I'm like, having a little bit of heartache for that.
Well, that's it. You get to my exact point.
So I'm
You
like,
get to my exact point. When we went into this endeavor, I said this in January. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
This is how the Norfolk Range fell apart from 2008 to 2012. And I was standing right there when I said, I'm going to quit funding projects in the area because you guys can't get along. There was weighted votes. There was because everybody wanted theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Theirs was on the list. I want mine. No, I want mine. And that's what happens when you get away, you get into a scoring criteria that everybody's surprised that now 392 is the most important corridor in the Norfolk Range. And I would say, in my perspective, doing transportation my whole life, it's not important, but I don't know if it's a regionally significant, most important corridor that functions for all Larimer, Weld, Windsor, Loveland, Fort Collins, right? I don't think that that corridor takes that criteria. So that's why when we went to this scoring list, that's exactly what happened. Took it and said, a state highway is more important than a US highway. And that in itself goes against the criteria and the data from federal government and from CDOT. See what I'm not saying it's not important.
No,
It is
no,
very
and I
important.
mean, it was interesting because CDOT did have state highway, you know, they.
It
they
does
had
have
it.
a 392. I'm
It
not
does.
saying that it's
No.
an operational, it's strategic, and like I said, the stuff that's, the Poudre River Bridge, the 2-lane section, is a disaster. I call her every time I'm on it. Heather, what the hell are you doing? Why aren't you fixing this? And she's like, really? Are you really calling me? You didn't fix it. That's what I did. So I just bear sometimes, right? But I will tell you, I'm not saying it's not important, but we have to be strategic. My perspective is this is strategic corridors that make sense. I'm not saying spend all the money on 34. We did spend all the money on I-25 because it was strategic to not only the Norfolk range, but to the entire state, right? US 34 is just as important to Kersey and Wiggins and Estes as it is to us. That's a regional priority. It's not like, hey, people, sorry, I can take this wrong. People aren't driving from Nebraska to Windsor to get to Estes. I promise you, everyone stays off 392. But we have to have a mentality thought process. And I think in the next session, as much as I want you guys to all fund 3-4 at 17, we're not gonna wait. We're gonna do it, right? I'm not gonna wait. I'm gonna get it done. The Greeley's like, we gotta get it done. 35th and 47th, that's been on their list since 2015. So I think that's why I was talking about, there has to be some thought process into this regional anticipation and thinking bigger than just individuals, and that's hard.
It is hard, especially because if you are a small community,
I know.
we don't have any, I mean, like, I'm never gonna score high on this list because there's 6,000 people in my town.
But I will promise you, you got $22 million in resurfacing a new Main Street. But we didn't have a chance to get that in Greeley. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's the other dollars. That's why I said that's all.
But I think that's why it needs to be a larger conversation, though, where you discuss.
Yeah, especially in Eaton. And Eaton's a good example because that is kind of an outlier there. I see that point.
Will, I was like, who's that? Sorry, Will, I
It's
didn't
Will.
recognize you kicked in.
No, I just remember this conversation, and you did call this out in January, and this is exactly what's happening. I just don't know the solution because, yeah, it's a wicked problem for sure.
It's not a big problem. I mean, there's $7 billion worth of needs. I promise. It's not just this list. There's other stuff.
No, I said it's a wicked problem in that it doesn't have a clear solution. One way we're all fighting against each other. The other way, like Heidi brought up, it's focusing on one corridor that it's hard for a place like Eaton to get what they need out of that.
85 is one of the main corridors.
Well, I drive all of these roads because I live in this area. So at some point, things do affect you. You leave your little bubble, like you're in on all of these roads on some level.
Yeah.
So like they all have significance on some level.
Teach you how to use Waze where it tells you to avoid some of these. All right, well, you guys, this is not against anything you guys did. So I think what I heard is we want another meeting, maybe a couple hours off one of these main meetings to have a deeper conversation, get a little frisky, figure out what we're gonna do. I heard that we want to reevaluate potentially on how this list is scored out. Is there somebody with their hand up? I can't see. So I'm just recapping, Commissioner. Would you like to help me recap, or you have more to add?
I can do that. And Becky didn't read what I wrote in the chat. I wrote that I have to run my mouth again, but she's far too polite to actually say that. Let me run my mouth for a second. I hear, Liz, I hear you. And trust me, back when I was wearing my Johnstown hat, I would say, what about Johnstown? Quite a bit. But we are a regional planning organization that must have regional priorities. There's the old adage of don't hate the play, I hate the game. We are all players in a given game, and the game has rules, and the rules are set by CDOT, and we're kind of making up our own rules. I think as we continue to kind of look at these priorities, we need to lean more into what is in PD 14, what is there in the four different priorities that CDOT has. Do we literally have that as scoring criteria in our game? If we're going to be, if our ultimate goal is to get these darn things funded, then don't you think we ought to play into the game a little bit? And furthermore, I guess I would ask that CDOT would be involved in some of these conversations. If Heather or one of her staff want just yet another meeting, I don't know whether they were involved in TAC, but it seems to me that it ultimately we're trying to get money, and that's where it comes from is CDOT. So let's be the right players with the right rules and the right game.
So I will say CDOT provided a significant amount of the data, and we would not have been able to do this in this amount of time without the team back here behind me putting the data together. And they sat through a lot of these conversations with us as well. So you're absolutely right. They were right at that too.
And I want to make it clear, there's nothing on here that I don't think needs to get done. All these need to get done. And if we had the money, we would do it all. That is not, all these projects are strategic and need to get done. What is the most strategic for a regional perspective to get money to get things accomplished? All right.
Yeah, I don't want to sound, I get it. Like Bertha doesn't use 34, but we have a lot of things that go through 34 and a lot of people use it. And I think Commissioner James, you just made a great point that really kind of helped guide me. Just look at this as a regional priority here. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm going to end it.
One question. So going back to what Heather in her presentation talked about basically a 50% reduction in funding, right? So we're spending all this time looking at tier 1, tier 2. What's the likelihood of any one of these 21 projects being done in the next 2 years? So how much time do you want to keep spending on a list that we don't have enough money for? I mean, I look at, I'll speak up for the small town too. I don't say much in these meetings, and most people that know me think that I'm sick when I don't talk a lot. But the impact, if you look at every one of these interchanges, roads, I probably personally drive on them sometime or another. But the amount of money that our taxpayers at Severance pay is the same amount of money as the taxpayer in Greeley pays. What I struggle with in absorbing this information is how do I go back to my constituents and say, you're not gonna get a damn dime of any of the money that you paid for.
Strategic money.
Well, strategic money, right.
That's the key. We got to keep this as strategic money.
Well, and that's part of where I want to go with this. So let's imagine for a minute, it's a big imagine, that Severance has all kinds of money to spend on transportation. We are bordered, like as most communities, by state highways and limited based on what CDOT is willing to come to the table with on certain projects. Is there a way to prioritize this list with communities that have funding available immediately? Call it shovel ready. We've got money available to fix, like in our case, if you gave us $3-4 million, we can fix 80% of our transportation problems in Severance. And yet we're making this list to do 2 that's not even going to affect, most of the drivers in the region. So I'm trying to flip it upside down, and it's probably not going to go anywhere. I get it, but I at least wanted to get that opinion out there as to the big thing I'm trying to get across. It's very difficult for me to explain to our constituents how we're left out again.
So I'm going to start with, I agree. However, when you look at these strategic projects, your $3 million that you need, I think comes out of a different. I think we can make you whole to get $3 million to get what you need, but it's got to be working through CDOT, through operations, faster safety, through RPP, through other avenues of dollars.
Which is not on this list anywhere.
Well, this list, but we can pull out this list from those fundings too. So we can say, hey, we're doing a resurfacing job on 257, and there's something on this list. I'm saying it because I think there's a 257.
Yeah, there is.
So we can say, hey, can we go get, the reason why you build these lists the major project list, like what we're talking here, is because you might be able to put $2 million to get a 30% set of plans, that then you can go and find a community that has a match for 80%, or Heather's got $11 million out in the following years for a project where you need 60, but you're getting a set of plans ready, you're getting the project ready. When I look at strategic projects, you're getting them ready. I-25 had no money in 2013, zero, none. We put $6 million into I-25 in 2014, approximately 2014. Then I might have put some design in earlier, like 2012. And we had $3 million of design that I peanut buttered out for all corridors. And in 2017, we started building because we went out and we got it ready. No one said we could get it done. No one, and then that money fell out of the sky, because it does occasionally. And federal dollars came and we got that done. That's why you take some of these big projects and you just put a $3 million design fee, or you put something towards it. And if it's part of your strategic plan and it's regional, then you start getting ready. If you're not thinking about tomorrow, and you're only worried about what you're doing today, you will miss out on the future dollars. That's why these plans are that way, because the smaller jobs get done through the resurfacing, through the faster safety, through the RPP, through M projects. I mean, HSIP money, all those different pots of money that we're not even talking about tonight. We haven't even touched the surface of all Heather's $300 million a year she gets.
She's rich.
Well, what I see, you guys are looking to spend $900 million to $1 billion in your construction thing. There's more money in each region that aren't just part of this 225. Now, I'm not talking about this money, but there's a bigger pot of money that comes from to the regions. So I think that's the conversations I think the next meeting we can talk about, because maybe there's some of these projects that fit in a different pool, that we have to use a different pool of money, color of money to get it done.
So maybe when you do a dot system, you can have colored dots too.
We're already wrangling cats with 14 pussy. All right, well, I do, this is so important conversations. And I just want to make sure you guys know, this has nothing to do with the tech. You guys did, as Tricia said, you guys really, we put you through a ringer, right? You guys were all sitting there going, oh my God, they're gonna kill us. But you guys did a very good job, and thank you, CDOT, for supporting them. And we're gonna go ahead and end that conversation. But we'll let Becky and the TAP set up a meeting and we can have another conversation. How's that? Tomorrow. All right. Okay, you guys are killing me. All right, now that we're done with item 18, we're gonna go to we're on item 18, sorry. Regional Active Transportation Corridors, updates 2025 Transportation Plan. Jerome.
Thank you. I will try to make this quick. I hate to pull us all up. All right, next slide, please. Oh, well, it's a surprise. All right, so just as a reminder, the Regional Active Transportation Corridors are a network of low-stress active transportation facilities between communities. It is a mix of on and off-street facilities. It is mostly off-street, but we do have some sections that are on the roadway. And ultimately, they are meant to serve as a spine for bicycle and pedestrian travel in the region. We do not intend these corridors to be holistic. We do intend on local communities to build off of these corridors to ultimately feed into the regional network. These corridors are intended to be used for all types of transportation trips. We do not differentiate between commuting versus recreation. And we are anticipating that it is fully built out by 2045. I will add a little bit of an asterisk to that. Depending on this conversation, we are recommending adding a new corridor. And depending on that might push that date.
392.
It does slightly impact 392. So that date might be a little bit further out, since this quarter, assuming that it is approved, would be added years after all the other ones, which were initially added in the 2012 bicycle plan.
What one you at?
Well, it's not there yet. It's not there yet. We're getting there. Next slide, please. So this is our proposed RTC network. So there are two major updates to this. The first one is on RITC number 8, which is BNSF Fort Collins to Berthoud. We are proposing extending that north of its northern terminus up out of the region towards Wellington. And we'll go into more detail on the new additions later in the presentation. And then we are recommending adding a new corridor, which I very creatively named Johnstown to Severance, that would go through Johnstown to Severance.
The purple one?
No,
The red one. I tried to make it the most striking color, and it is slightly bigger than the others, so hopefully it sticks out. Next slide, please. So this art piece, the red dots are jobs, so in the blue dots are households. The lighter colors are 2019 jobs and households, and the dark colors are 2050 jobs and households. I wanted to provide this slide to show, one, why some of the corridors are where they are, and as a way to visually show how these corridors would, what populations it would go through. So I'll give you a moment to look at it. I know there's a lot to look at here. It's a little. Next slide, please. So to make it a little bit easier, I also split it out. So the map on the left is just jobs, and the map on the right is just households. I got fortunate that we have this big, lovely screen to make it easier, but I did want to make sure that we had it split out in case it's hard to see. So I'll give a moment to look over this before we get into the corridors. Next slide, please. So the first one we'll be discussing is RITC number 8, which is BNSF Fort Collins to Berthoud. So the current northern terminus is at the Poudre River Trail in Fort Collins. We are recommending extending that northward towards the NPO boundary. This alignment is outlined in the City of Fort Collins draft Strategic Trail Master Plan, which it will be adopted here soon if it has not been adopted already. Larimer County staff has met with the town of Wellington to determine alignment north of the NPO into downtown Wellington. So are there any comments on RITC number 8? This is an easy one.
Okay.
I'm zooming here now. Next slide, please.
Seeing hands on the screen.
So this is just to zoom in on the households and jobs along the corridor north of its current terminus. And as you can see, there will be significant projected household growth along the corridor. I do want to note that each dot is 50 households. So I'm not going to try to count and do math and embarrass myself in front of everybody, but that's a lot of blue dots, which suggests that there will be a lot of new households going along this corridor. This new alignment, or this extension, would allow for more bike connections in this northern part of Fort Collins, and will allow for additional connections down south along the corridor. Next slide, please. So this is a new one, very creative name, Johnstown Severance. This corridor is along Will County Road 17 and US 257, with the southern terminus being RITC number 2, which is the Little Thompson River Trail south in southern portion of Johnstown. And the northern terminus is State Highway 14 in Severance. When I originally brought this to TAC in April, I believe, we had the original northern terminus at Will County Road 76, but then we had discussions with town and Severance staff and determined that it would be appropriate to extend it north to State Highway 14. So this corridor impacts 5 different RITCs. So RITC number 3, which is Big Thompson River Trail, RITC number 11, which is the US 34 Parallel Corridor, RITC number 4, which is the Great Western Trail, RITC number 6, Poudre River Trail, then RITC number 5, the North Loveland to Windsor Corridor. Next slide, please. So with this plan for the section between Johnstown to Windsor is outlined in the corresponding plans. So for the town of Johnstown, it is outlined in the 2008 Transportation Master Plan. In that plan, it notes that there will be 10-inch sidewalk and bicycle paths along every arterial. which includes both County Road 17 and the town of Johnstown. It is also listed as a neighborhood trail in that plan. In the City of Greeley's 2025 Trails Master Plan, it is a recommended off-street trail corridor. And then in the town of Windsor's 2020 Transportation Master Plan, there's a recommendation for a mix of multi-use trail and/or bike lanes along the corridor within Windsor. I do not believe it is currently in the town severance plan, but when I had that discussion with the town staff, they did note that if this is approved by planning council, it will be included in future plans. Next slide, please. So this is again to show the dots. I tried to zoom in as much as I could. This is a bit of a longer corridor, so it's a little harder to zoom in like I did with the other one. But as you can see on this map, we are projecting to see significant growth along this corridor. As we know from our planning efforts for the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, we know that the central part of our region, so the area around I-25 and US 34, is part of the region that we're anticipating to see the most growth, and that is reflected in this map. We also are seeing significant household and job growth in West Greeley along this corridor, as well as in Johnstown and Windsor, and in portions of Severance along the corridor up to County Road 14. So are there any comments on this corridor? You're making it easy for me. Not that I'm playing. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, we will, assuming council is okay with moving forward with adding the new corridor and extending RITC number 8 north, we will begin the RITC vision process for those two corridors. And as part of that process, we create corridor visions. And in these corridor visions, we get into the details. So each corridor is split up into sections. And then we go in with each section and provide a segment description. We identify the jurisdiction, the facility type, its status, and any key local connection needs, as well as crossing needs. We also determine population along half mile of the corridor, jobs along half mile of the corridor, schools and transit stops. We also denote how many on-street miles are per corridor versus off-street miles. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And what I'm looking for out of this conversation is a head nod on whether or not the council is comfortable moving forward with the RITCs as presented.
Is there any questions? And then I'll ask my question. So do I have anybody in here that's not for moving 8 farther north? I thought I'd start there, not. I think everybody's okay with it. What was the other number?
RITC 13.
13? Anybody against the Johnstown to Wyoming? All right, I think everybody's good with it, so unless anybody has questions.
Fantastic, thank you.
Good job, Jerome.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on. Transportation Commission, he's not here. I'm sure there's something in the paper written, nothing?
No, not for the commissioner.
Yeah, the commissioners are so happy with where they're going. 20 staff report written. Colorado Transportation Investment Office written. Front Range Passenger Rail.
Mr. Malo would like to take this one.
Mr. Malo, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'll go through this kind of quick. Johnny lost all control of the meeting, and now we're up against our end time. So.
Hey, we're on schedule, baby.
All right. So Front Range Passenger Rail, the board met last May 8th, and we had 3 topics. One being the project plan. So we spent time, as we should, going through the project development and where we are. And then we talked about the joint service plan. And then next, we talked about the district operating funds, how basically the operating funds, I want to get this right. Operating funds targeted to deplete in summer of 2026. Plus, the additional funding is likely needed to attract GM candidates. You all might know or not know that we have a GM shortage in that role. And come to find out, at least in my mind, that role can only go through September 30th. That's a statute. So we got to hire a GM and get them on board, et cetera, by the September 30th. So that's on top of the operating funds that we discussed in the shortfall. And what else can I tell you guys? That's about it. We had an executive session. I couldn't tell you what's in it anyway, but that's good because quite frankly, I can't remember what it was. So that is it from Front Range. Tricia, you have anything that you want to add to that?
I think you very succinctly covered it. Thank you.
I just thank God I'm not on that.
I do have one thing to add. The Front Range Passenger Rail District staff reached out and they would like to provide an update at the July council meeting, so they will be doing the presentation. So,
All in favor? No, all right, moving on. Thank you very much. Host council member, Mr. Mayor Matt Bride.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. As last two times that we hosted, I started by hoping that everybody arrived here in a safe and timely fashion. If you didn't, then please give us some more money and we'll make sure that you're on time and safe fashion. So I figured I'd stay consistent with my comments. We have two different NPO projects. They're happening in the town of Severance. One of the big ones, Weld County Road 19 and East Harmony Road traffic light. This has been a long time coming. It's very dangerous. The intersection, County Road 19, if you know where I'm at, dead ends into Harmony Road, which wraps around Windsor Reservoir. So it's a major tie between Windsor and Severance, as well as traffic coming off 257 and reconnecting to 257. The engineering is complete. Construction team bidding is done. We've hired that team. There's a kickoff meeting actually on Monday. The project includes the traffic light and paving. We hope to have this complete no later than the end of the year, possibly even by September. As far as I know, knock on wood, we have not had any fatalities at that intersection, which allowed us to proceed. So hopefully we're getting ahead of that as we should. Second project is trail related, Great Western Trail. This involves completely paving the trail from County Road 23 over to Harmony Road or County Road 70, and also includes flashing lighted beacons on County Road 23 and on 74, so that we have much safer crossings there for both bikers, pedestrians, and occasionally a horse, which might be me and my horse you might see out there sometime. Our plan in Severance, and our hope in Severance actually is that the length of the trail that goes through Severance, which is the longest for a community, I think Weld County still has a little bit longer. Our goal, and we're budgeting for paving the entire trail, which we think is good long-term from a safety standpoint, maintenance, etc. We've got several other really good projects coming up, but I know we'd like to get out of here. I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for what you do. I hope my comments earlier did not come across as though I'm unappreciative of anybody's efforts. I'm certainly not. This is a complicated subject. I do my best to keep our citizens informed when they're willing to listen. It's much easier over a cocktail, so I always suggest that. But thank you all for being here, and please get home safely.
Thank you for hosting us.
Our pleasure.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, remember, if you have any other additional items you would like to get them to Becky, if you have items you want to talk about or have on the agenda. We do gender review day after tax, so we'll be doing that here soon. And the next meeting is on the
July 3rd.
Third,
July 10th.
10th, because we're not gonna do it on the 3rd. July 10th, and it will be in Johnstown. So come with your boots on, and I'm looking forward to some good old Johnstown food.
All right.
Right, thank you
We
very
will
much.
promise to disappoint you.